So joining me live now from Devonport, Tasmania, is the opposition leader, Sussan Ley. We've been trying to get you on Sunday for a while, Sussan Ley. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
When did it happen?
I've got to start. Well,
It's a pleasure, Andrew. Terrific to join you from Tassie.
When we booked this in, I wasn't expecting to start with this, but I will. Australia's version of the royal wedding. What's your reaction to it?
I wish Anthony and Jodie every happiness. A wedding day is a very special day indeed. And there's been a lot of commentary about the wedding on breakfast television, and that will continue to be the case, I'm sure, Andrew. But for me, I wish them every happiness as they continue to build their life together.
Are you okay with it being held at the lodge? Many Australians have to pay for a venue, but the couple's at pains to say the PM paid for it and Jodie paid for everything.
Yes, I am okay with it being at the lodge, Andrew.
All right, that's short and simple. Could hardly even use that grab, Sussan Ley. Well, Anthony Albanese offered to meet you about these environmental laws. Why didn't you meet him?
That's not the case. There wasn't an offer to meet. But what I really want to make clear, Andrew, is how long the coalition was at the table, because
Sussan Ley, I just want to. Can I just stop you there? Can I just stop you there? So I don't know if I've got wrong information here. I understand the Prime Minister texted you suggesting a meeting. Are you saying that's not correct? That occurred this week?
There's only one text, Andrew, and that's the text. There's only one text that is relevant here. That is the text from me to the Prime Minister that remains unanswered. Now, it's important, Andrew, that we understand in the context of the process that I know your viewers are interested in. We were at the table till very late that night. Let me just get
this point about you. I want to get this point about you. I'm sorry. What did your text say? Did he say to you in question time, when are we going to meet? Because I've been told he said to you at some juncture around Wednesday, when are we going to meet? Are you denying that?
There was a conversation. It was about a variety of aspects of Murray-Watts negotiations, the process, etc. I then sent a text. I don't ever reveal the contents of those texts. Others can. And it was clear that the text was not responded to because obviously by then the government had decided to do the deal with the Greens.
In which case, did you leave that too late? Because Sussan Ley, you could have met with Albanese earlier, could you not? Like you left it all to Angie Bell and John O'Doniam and one or two others. And because of that, business who've been making representations to you have a Labor Greens bill now. Do you feel any blame do you take any responsibility for the fact there's not a Labor coalition deal on this? Could you have met the Prime Minister or offered to meet him earlier?
Absolutely. I know where, if you want to describe it as blame or cause or consequences, where it lies, Andrew. Remember the day before this, I said I would meet the Prime Minister every single day over summer for 8 weeks, because what we have overlooked here is that there was no rush. There is a great deal of detail. There were 7 amendments that, on behalf of business, we had at that point in front of the government. And they did not come back with sufficient movement towards, I don't think, any of those 7 amendments. This did not need to have the speed that it took on.
But he's called you bluff, hasn't he?
What it was in the end was what we all saw.
Albanese's called you bluff here.
Absolutely not.
So he has called you bluff because you obviously thought that he wouldn't do a deal with the Greens, Sussan Ley.
I completely reject that, Andrew, and notwithstanding the delay on this line between Devonport and Sydney, where you are, I want to make this very, very clear. This was a political fix, and I can demonstrate that with this simple fact. In that last week, Murray Watt was walking around the building with 2 sets of amendments, one for the Coalition and one for the Greens. What does that tell you? I must get the deal done. It doesn't matter what it is, I just need to get a deal done. Now, this is not the integrity of the legislative process that Australians have come to expect. There was no rush. We're talking 1,500 pages of legislation. And if you want to talk about the Prime Minister and his ministers being tricky, as they have been across a range of areas this entire year, we could not get the black and white details of the amendments out of them almost until the 11th hour. There was no willingness. Now, my Shadow Environment Minister, Angie Bell, did an outstanding job. Industry was incredibly worried. They had 7 areas of real concern. I'm standing now in Tasmania, where hardworking businesses, sawmillers, people in the native forest timber industry are staring down the barrel of something called a life support package. Well, you don't put a life support package on the table unless you want to kill an industry. And that's what's happening here in Tasmania. Separately from that, the energy producers of Australia have said this will push up power prices. And my affordable energy plan is the way to bring those power prices down. This is working directly in contradiction with those. This is a very bad bill, unnecessarily rushed, done for political reasons.
What to you are the most concerning aspects of the legislation?
Well, simply that we won't get what the government said we needed to get. And the one thing I did agree with the Prime Minister and the ministers on was that we need faster approvals. This isn't going to generate bilateral approvals between the Commonwealth and the states. It's going to give a lot of power to an independent EPA. Now, that independent EPA in the future could have anyone running it who is perhaps in a previous life a Green activist or a Greens member of Parliament that can effectively control what happens with environmental laws in this country. So the forest industry closing down. Gas approvals, by the way, are already in the slow lane. This legislation is putting them in the really, really slow lane. We can't have a situation in this country, Andrew, where energy prices continue to go through the roof with a government that effectively lied to you about your power prices coming down, with industry going offshore. And now we've got this dirty deal, not done dirt cheap, however, with the Greens that actually puts everything back into a holding pattern, essentially.
All right, well, let me tell you what they're telling me.
Unless we address the energy economy...
No, I kind of agree with that. But look, I just want to put this point to you. And energy prices are a massive concern, there's no doubt. And frankly, the government did lie about it. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. But they say there will now be faster approvals. They say there'll be more housing projects that get up and running. They say that more renewables projects can get up and running, and that will assist with energy prices. They also say that even though it's harder for coal and gas projects to get approvals than other projects under this legislation, it will still be quicker than the current system. Do you accept any of those premises?
I don't accept a single one. I've been an Environment Minister, and I thought it was a bit bewildering that the Environment Minister today is calling out the slowness of his own department. Because, Andrew, there are statutory timeframes at which approvals have to happen now. The fact that they've blown out beyond those timeframes is a massive failure of a minister and a government managing his government department. So there isn't even a bilateral arrangement in place that would streamline approvals between the Commonwealth and the states. And that's the critical ingredient of actually faster approvals. Meanwhile, there's a whole lot of new roadblocks in the way. This is covered in green ink and red tape, and it is a disaster for the things that the economy needs, because every day we wake up to more news about productivity slowing, about energy prices going up, about manufacturers going out of business, about costs. And everyone's electricity bill has gone up 40%. The price of gas has gone up 40% too.
Sussan Ley, let's talk about energy.
Manufacturing.
Let's move to energy. So Western Australia will be coal-free before the next federal election by 2027. That's in terms of their power sources. How do you align that fact with your decision to dump net zero?
The eastern states are 60% reliant on coal for their energy grid. In Western Australia, if you want to talk about Western Australia, the transmission infrastructure is straining and is backed up by diesel generation. You only have to look at the Linus project near Kalgoorlie and how blackouts have continually affected it. Because it's not just about the source of the energy, it's about the reliability, it's about baseload generation. It's about all of the things that allow a transition to renewables. And I want to make this point clear, Andrew, and our plan does too. We're not anti-renewables. We are just anti a plan that this government has brought forward with targets it can't meet at a cost Australians cannot afford. And when you consider that since 2005, our emissions have gone down almost twice as fast as the developed world, and to get to the impossible target by 2050, they'll have to go down twice as fast again. Now, the effect of that is that we've just got unaffordability writ large across our entire economy. When energy is unaffordable, everything is unaffordable.
Would you be open to government investment in either a coal-fired or nuclear-powered power station?
Our policy makes it very clear we're technology agnostic. And that includes nuclear, and it includes technologies of the future, which may not have been fully developed, which add to the renewable dimensions of the economy.
But it
doesn't include government doing this. The private sector should. We have a capacity investment scheme in this country that underwrites the firming of renewable generation. Now, we're saying you should add coal and gas to that capacity scheme, because we know that if you have renewables at the rate that they're being developed, they risk being stranded assets without sufficient baseload and dispatchable capacity coming online. So our approach is simply to be sensible about this, to say, what do we need to do to expand electricity generation, to lock in lower prices for the future, and not to go on a renewables-only journey that risks crashing the grid at critical times, because this government has an ideological war against gas. Back to the EPBC approval process, Andrew. If we don't get gas approvals and gas coming online in this country, we are heading for massive, massive challenges, and that includes the failures of this government this year, because you talked about so-called delivery. Well, I can tell you what this government has delivered: higher power prices, higher cost of living, higher inflation, and unfortunately next year, the possibility of higher interest rates too. This is awful for Australian families struggling in the lead up to Christmas.
A lot of your supporters wanted to keep net zero, the supporters who voted for you for the leadership. Did you agree to dump net zero because to not do so would see you lose the leadership?
That's an completely incorrect characterisation, and it reflects a lot of commentary, and I understand commentators have to make that sort of commentary. Andrew, with this plan, we made choices as a party.
What's incorrect?
The choice was an important
What's incorrect
one.
about it?
It backed in affordable energy first.
Sussan Ley, what is incorrect about that? You had 17 people in the Liberal Party room, 15 of which voted for you, 15 or 16, and you won by 3 votes, who wanted to keep net zero. So what's incorrect about saying your supporters wanted you to keep net zero?
The proof point here, Andrew, is that a couple of Sundays ago, my entire party room and the Nationals party room left a joint party meeting, all united behind this plan, and everyone is still united behind this plan. Of course, people have different views on different policy areas, as they should. As I said, I would enfranchise every single one of my team to express those views. But the important thing now is that we are united behind this plan, because we are out there to fight for the Australian people who have got a really bad deal from this government. And when I get up every morning, I don't think about these questions about numbers, and I think about the Australian people, because they are counting on us and we are there for them.
Yes, but you must concede that if you don't get that news poll primary vote of the coalition into the 30s, you're done for in this term as leader.
Again, that's commentary with great respect, and I understand that you and others ask these questions. But we're 2.5 years out from an election. By that election, Andrew, we will have continued the development that is already underway of a serious, credible, compelling policy agenda. And I've talked about managing the budget responsibly within our means, because, we're paying $50,000 a minute on debt in this country right now. Think of the things we could be spending that $50,000 a minute on. I've talked about lower personal income taxes as a commitment that I will have made, that we will deliver leading into the next election. I've talked about tackling industrial relations, which is a massive drag on productivity in this country. So we are developing that policy agenda, and energy is at the heart of all of it, because energy being unaffordable right now means we don't make things in Australia anymore. And I just want to remind you, because I reckon you and I had a conversation 18 months ago, around the time of the Prime Minister's Future Made in Australia announcement, $22 billion, a big bureaucratic front door. How much of that has been spent? Zero. Zero. And what that points to is the fact that we're not making things in Australia anymore. We're sending the production processes that made this country strong offshore. Shame on the Labor Party.
What do you make of Melissa McIntosh in every second interview saying she wants to be leader of the party? That's got to annoy you, doesn't it?
Not at all. Melissa's a terrific colleague, someone I've known for many years, fighting so hard for the people of Western Sydney, who are really, when we talk about struggling with cost of living issues, really in the frame, and also doing a great job as the Shadow Minister for Communications around the O Optus debacle.
Tony Abbott has called for Andrew Hastie to be reinstated on the front bench. Do you think that could happen anytime soon?
My front bench is my front bench. My shadow ministry are all doing an outstanding job right now. But wherever you sit in our party room and in our parliament, you can make a strong contribution. And that was something that I stated publicly as leader, and I've been committed to ever since. And I learnt when I came into the parliament 24 odd years ago, Andrew, that you can make a contribution. You can be a senator for a great state. You can represent a community. We all come first and foremost with that passionate sense of representing our communities and a determination to make this country a better place. And I'm very proud to lead every single member of my team united in that effort. But most importantly, united behind this plan. I can't talk about energy enough because it is just so important. And when you look at 6 bailouts of metal smelters in Australia, Bell Bay up the road in Launceston, not too far away, punished by this government under their safeguard mechanism, which means if we're not careful, we won't make aluminium in this country anymore. We'll continue to import all of the building blocks of a modern industrialised economy from overseas if we don't get energy policy right.
Will Barnaby Joyce's defection hurt the opposition politically, particularly if he goes to One Nation?
Barnaby's a member of the Nationals, and while he's a friend of mine, it's not something that I have any influence or commentary over. He makes his own decisions, as he should. I don't sit in the Nationals party room, I never have, and I lead the Liberal Party. The decisions that Barnaby makes, again, are entirely a matter for him.
Have you spoken to him or messaged him since his announcement?
Yeah, I speak to him regularly. As I said, we're friends, and over the years I've checked in on him from time to time because the collegiate relationship many of us have in the building, sometimes it's overlooked by people outside the building, but it's important to keep those things front and centre.
Have you urged him not to go to One Nation then?
I haven't because, Andrew, these are decisions for him. What he does are a matter for him. He's not a member of my party room.
Do you think his grievances with David Littleproud are at all well-founded?
Well, you're asking me to comment on something that has previously been commentary. I simply leave all of the conversations around that to the individuals involved. Simple as that.
It's been well reported that you've got an immigration policy coming out soon. I see the Shadow Home Affairs Minister, John O'Dunning's working on that when Andrew Hastie resigned because he said in Home Affairs he wouldn't be working on it. In relation to the policy, it's been widely broadcast that you won't come up with migration targets. So what's the point of it? And is the report true in the Sunday Telegraph this morning that you'll have English tests for foreign students, international students?
What I've said, and I've said this for months now, is that we will announce our migration principles before the end of the year, and we will. The issue around numbers is an important one, and it's part of the conversations I'm having across the country. But This government has got migration policy all wrong. They cannot give a number that's actually reliable for more than a few months. They have no population plan going forward. They cannot, most importantly, reassure communities what that balance between migration and infrastructure looks like to reassure those communities that the infrastructure that they need will be there for the future. And this is the most important point. My criticism of this government around migration policy is what I've just said, but also it's not a criticism of any migrant or migrant community. It is a massive failing of governments to build the infrastructure that our communities need, and they're rightly concerned about that. We find that the commute from, say, Western Sydney to the city is taking longer. Public transport's less reliable. Schools and hospitals hard to find. Housing estates not being built.
Why no target yet?
Well, what we're doing is talking. Well, you won't have to wait too long, Andrew. It's December tomorrow before we talk about the principles that I will enunciate, and they will include a variety of things, and we will develop further what those look like over time, because we need the data from the government in the categories of visas so that we can actually put forward a coherent policy based on that. Now, I'm in Tasmania. This state relies, very much like my own electorate, on working holidaymakers, on skilled migration. There are other parts of the country where international students, where graduate visas come into play. Then there's the humanitarian intake. Then there's family reunion. So there are so many components of migration. It isn't just a simple number. So we have to work through all this. But it is important that we say what those principles are, and we will.
Just finally, it was reported in the Australian newspaper that your Shadow Attorney General Andrew Wallace put a proposal to Shadow Cabinet calling for a full public inquiry into the Brittany Higgins compensation payment, and that proposal was defeated. Can you confirm this and explain what's the thinking behind all this?
Well, you're commenting on a report, Andrew, and I'm not going to go into details of Shadow Cabinet or other discussions. What I have said to the Prime Minister and his ministers is that they should answer the very reasonable questions that they have been asked about whether they exploited a very sensitive situation for political gain.
Opposition Leader Sussan Ley, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.